As founder of Beyond Borders, it gives me great pleasure to launch this inaugural lunch. I had the privilege last year of coming to the event in New York where you rightly honoured President Clinton. And as an international lawyer and mediator, I immediately got the unique value of this club. One need only look at Syria today to realise how the world needs both the example and experience of leaders who have not only served their country with distinction, but also stood aside in support of democracy and the rule of law when their time came to go. For those of you that don't know, Beyond Borders is a Scottish where it focuses on the most pressing issues of our time. It's supported by leading statesmen and women in the United Kingdom, and it also facilitates global discussions at its base at Geena House, the oldest inhabited house in Scotland, which has played host to some 27 kings and queens of Scotland. We dearly hope that in the coming year or so we may be able to play host to 27 prime ministers or ex-prime ministers and presidents there. I should also tell the club that Geena House, rather like Little Rock, has also produced its own President of the States of America, and indeed its First Lady. In 1770, a young American called Cyrus Griffith came to study law in Edinburgh. There he met Lord Linton, the eldest son of the 6th Earl of Geena. While dining there, Cyrus fell in love with the Earl's oldest daughter, Christina Stuart, and asked for her hand in marriage. The Earl was having none of it, but later that night, Christina jumped out of a window, eloped across the Scottish borders to marry her beloved. Reconciled to her family only much later, Christina left for the New World and entered the ferment of revolutionary American politics. In time, Cyrus Griffith rose to become the president of the US Continental Congress, handing over the reins of power to the first president of the United States, George Washington, in 1789. And Christina Stuart from Geena became one of America's first ladies. Why do I tell you this obscure story? Well, partly because I wanted to, but also to illustrate how women's role in history is being rediscovered through the archival power of new media. And partly because one sees in artists like my friend Manal Al Dowanyan the same strength of character that carried Christina, but a mental one as well. Both women in their 20s who resolved to push back the conventions of their age. Through her art, Manal empowers women in Arabia to reclaim their own histories and stories. I think it was Eleanor Roosevelt, another First Lady, who once said, "No one can make you feel inferior without your consent." Well, hopefully Christina Stuart adds, "No one can make you feel superior without your consent." But with both those sensibilities, they lie in Manal Al Dowanyan. As co-founder of the Delfina Foundation, we were, along with Delfina Entrecanales, very proud to give her a residency in 2009. We're even prouder to have supported the Club of Madrid in bringing her here together with other eminent speakers to join this very important debate today. So can I thank Maria Aina and also Tim Phillips for the invitation to Beyond Borders to support this inaugural event and to give us the opportunity to say a little word about both Beyond Borders and the Delfina Foundation. And I hope to see you all in the not too distant future in the Scottish borders at Geena House in Scotland. I'll introduce the speakers a little later, but if I may first of all introduce the Mayor of Little Rock, Mayor Stellardi, please.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. So good to see all of you here today in this beautiful building that we have, Heifer International. a Platinum LEED building right next to the Clinton Library and Center, which is also a Platinum LEED building. We're very proud of that. I'm here today to really welcome you on behalf of the 200,000 residents of the city, and we are honored to welcome the Club de Madrid to Little Rock. We're happy that we are able to show off our city and, more importantly, our citizens. We hope to make you feel welcome and home while you're here, and we hope that you'll come back and visit us often. For those of us who live here, we all know why we live here and the reasons we're so proud of our city, but we really do love to show people why we are so proud of our city and our home. So we hope that during your brief time here, you'll be able to gather a deeper understanding of the historical significance and the cultural influences and the continuing contributions of our people and our culture here in Little Rock and in the state of Arkansas. You know, Little Rock is probably known for two main things. We hope that as time goes on, there'll be even more than those. But obviously, one is our beloved native son, the 42nd President of the United States, President Bill Clinton, who will be with us here this afternoon. And also the integration of the Central High School, the integration crisis in 1957. Central High School is, of course, a working high school today, has about 2,500 students. It's also a National Historic Landmark. And this former reason that you're all here with us today is certainly a testament to the tremendous education and personal dedication that our president has had and continues to have toward the state. The latter issue, dealing with Central High School, is really a testament to the theme of Club de Madrid's annual conference today, a focus on women. Let me tell you why. Because simply put, the women of the city of Little Rock back in 1958 righted a very serious wrong here in the state. And it was the women of the city who spoke for those voices that were being ignored. It was the women of our city then and now, and I see many of them out here today, who put an emphasis on the single most important factor that contributes to the quality of life, and that has to do with the education of our children. During the summer of 1957, when the desegregation crisis at Central High began, and the governor of the state of Arkansas, Orville Fogg, was following that integration, invoked a recently passed state law which closed all the schools to prevent further integration. The women of this city were outraged by it, and many of them met privately in secret and came up with an opportunity to call a special election and to throw out the segregationist school board and to reopen the schools. It was the women of our city that did that, not the men. They held back. They were afraid to be out front on this issue, and it was the women of this city who were able to right this terrible, terrible injustice. I wanted to share that story with you because I know that the city would look very differently today if it were not for the work of these extraordinary women that opened up our schools. The Women's Emergency Committee was the name of the committee. Obviously, today we're dealing in an issue of women, the focus on women in art and media this afternoon, and I know that certainly that has had a great influence on all of us men in many, many different ways. I want you to know that I'm the son of a concert pianist and organist, my mother. I'm also the father of a daughter who is very accomplished in art, who received a degree in dance performance from Butler University in Indianapolis, and went on to dance with the American Ballet Theater for a while, performed in the first English-speaking version of a Broadway musical in Russia, 42nd Street, and has gone on and performed on some of these cruise ships for about 2 years and saw 42 different countries. I did not have to supply her with any funding during that time either. So little did I know that my daughter would be able to purchase a home in her own name before I even thought about doing that. So I want to tell you that I have a fond affection for the women of our city, the women of my family, and certainly the highest regard for the level of professionalism I see out in this audience and the level of professionalism that we see with women in the arts. So I want to thank our hosts today, Heifer International, as well. They've been tremendous hosts for this wonderful luncheon and yesterday evening. I'm looking forward to our special guest speaking today, Geena Davis and Manal Dowanyan. We want to thank you very much, and we're looking forward to your conversation about women in the art and in media. And at this time, I don't believe the Vice President of Club de Madrid is with us today, but Mark, do you want me to turn this back over to you? Or you want to have everyone enjoy lunch and we'll...
We do have the former Secretary General.
Very good, very good. Thank you all very much for being here today. Welcome to our city.
Good afternoon. My colleague Jorge Quiroga is in a press conference because our meeting went a bit late. I'm Kim Campbell. I'm one of the founding members of the Club of Madrid and actually served as its first president in 2002 after we were incorporated under Spanish law, and we were waiting for Fernando Henrique Cardoso to be finished his term as president of Brazil. He was our first president. The Club of Madrid was founded after a conference in 2001 on democratic transition and consolidation, which showed the very interesting chemistry between current and former leaders. And out of this came the idea that there might be a role for an organization of credible former democratic leaders who could share their experience with leaders of transitional democracies. That was the original vision. And since then, we started with about 35 members, and then we thought maybe we should plateau at 50, or maybe we could go up to 75. We're now over 90 members, all members by invitation from 62 different countries. And it is a marvelous group of people, a group of men and women who give their time to share their knowledge, their experience, their access, and their clout to open up possibilities for democratic development and the sharing of democratic values. We are called the Club of Madrid because we are based in Madrid after the conference where we first came up with the idea. We've had wonderful support from the Spanish governments at all different levels. And also Spain has a wonderful story to tell in terms of democratic transition. So Madrid really represents a history that many other countries in the world aspire to in terms of moving from authoritarian rule to a really functional democracy. And all of the former presidents of the Spanish government are members of the Club of Madrid. This is the only organization that they all belong to because they're at each other's throats in good partisan way normally. And two of the heroes of Spanish politics are actually here. I'm not going to name all the members, but Felipe González, who is one of the great heroes of Spanish democracy, who helped to create the democratic structure that has been so important in Spain and helping its transition over since the death of Franco. And former President Zapatero, who has just finished his term, is a new member of the Club of Madrid, is also a hero of democracy because he had the first cabinet that was 50% women. So Spain continues to lead the way. Our members travel all over the world in promoting democratic values and doing many, many different kinds of projects, but they are all deeply committed to the advancement of women. Why? Because they understand how important it is for the consolidation of democracy to have the political and economic empowerment of women. They've traveled to meet with women in the Horn of Africa, and I see Prime Minister Bondevik from Norway, who's one of our very, very actively engaged, Sadiq Al-Mahdi from Sudan, Mary Robinson, who is a hero to all of us on many issues, but particularly the advancement of women as the first woman president of Ireland. Many of the women here are first in their field, but the commitment of our male members, of all of the members of the Club of Madrid, to the advancement of women is very real. And so we were very excited to take as the theme of our annual conference this year, the focus on women. Every year, under Spanish law, we have to have a governance meeting, and our members, even though they're all former leaders of government, chafe at that. That's not what they're really interested in, passing resolutions that they have to pass under Spanish law. What they really want to do is talk about the real stuff. So to make sure they'll come to the meetings, we always have a wonderful conference on some kind of stimulating issue related to democracy. And here we are in Little Rock talking about women in all different aspects of their importance in political empowerment. And I do want to say how delighted we are to be here. We're here working in partnership with the Clinton Presidential Center. Bill Clinton is one of our original charter members. He's our honorary chair, and we're really thrilled to be here. But I think also it's been very exciting to have the opportunity to get to know this city. And, you know, the mayor was right. I'm old enough to remember the turmoil here in 1957 with the struggle over the Little Rock schools. And it is a great joy. I was also here for the monsoon for the opening of the Clinton Library, and that's the only other time I was been here. And I think Bill missed a really good opportunity to print up T-shirts that said I survived the opening of the Clinton Library, because I'm from Vancouver and even I thought it was wet. But being here is a wonderful opportunity for us also to learn and grow. And we've had some thrilling conversations about Arkansas. I mean, why it is that aerospace is your leading export, why it is that you've been able to accomplish the things that you accomplish, and what are the challenges that you see ahead. And I was the first, and still today, the only woman to be Prime Minister of Canada. But I had another first. I was the first Prime Minister to have held elected office at all three levels of government. And so it's been very interesting for me to meet with your state and local officials, current and former, here, and see the kind of dynamism, because again, so many of the changes that we need to make to empower people, to do the kinds of programs we're going to talk about art and politics, and the importance that role that art can play in bringing people together, opening up opportunities, and taking you around the world on a free ticket, which isn't a bad thing either. These things often happen at the local level in municipalities and in regional governments. So all in all, I think the members of the Club of Madrid feel we will learn more than we will impart while we're here. But we're thrilled to be here. We look forward to the presentations later at the end of the meal. But welcome to you to our meeting, and thank you for the warm, wonderful welcome that we've received here in Little Rock, Arkansas. This is a very, very memorable meeting for us, one that I know that we're going to carry in our hearts and be talking about for a long time. And so for now, bon appetit. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kim. We're running a little bit late, so we're going to start the debate, but please feel free, obviously, to tuck into your main course as we do so. So, if I may, can I just invite up onto the stage Mayor Amaya Harris, Geena Davis, and Manal Al Dowanyan. And as they come up, perhaps I can just say one or two words by way of introduction. The facilitator today is Maya Harris. She is the Vice President of the Ford Foundation for Democracy, Rights and Justice Program. Maya leads the program's worldwide efforts to strengthen the rule of law, improve governance, transparency, and create opportunities for civil society to thrive and fulfill the promises of human rights. She was formerly the Executive Director of the American Civil Liberties Union for Northern California, and I'll leave it to Maya to frame the debate we're going to have this afternoon. Can we also give a very warm welcome to one of Hollywood's most respected actors, Academy Award-winning Geena Davis. I won't begin to repeat her many films or tell her which one is my particular favourite, but I should record that she did break ground in her portrayal of the first female presidential President of the United States in the ABC hit show Commander-in-Chief, for which she rightly won a Golden Globe Award. Less well known is the fact that Geena is a member of the Genius Society Mensa. Today that genius is more directed towards advocacy on behalf of women and girls, and as founder of the Geena Davis Institute on Gender in Media, she has campaigned tirelessly to reduce the stereotyping of women and increasing the number of female characters. She was recently appointed Special Envoy for Women and Girls for the United Nations International Telecommunications Union and serves on the board of the White House Project. We could not have a more eminent speaker on this subject. And finally, to my friend, the wonderful Manal, born and raised in Saudi Arabia, She has studied at a range of art institutions. In 2009, she became a resident artist at the Delfina Foundation. Since then, she has participated in numerous touring exhibitions, both regionally and internationally, including exhibiting at the 49th session of the United Nations on the Status of Women. More recently, her work is to be found amongst the Venice, Berlin and Istanbul Biennales. She is a member of the British Council International Culturals Leaders Programme, and her artworks form part of the permanent collection of the British Council. You don't need to go all the way to London to see some of that work, however, because we brought some of it to the Presidential Library here in Little Rock. So I would urge you all to go and take a look at part of our exhibition, I Am. It is, to my mind, one of the most powerful statements of female identity to come out of the region of Arabia for some time. So, Maya, with that, perhaps I can hand over to you to open the debate.
Thank you. And first, let me thank Club de Madrid for its dedicated efforts to really strengthen democracy around the world, and for organizing this conference, which really puts front and center the notion that for democracy to deliver, you have to have the full participation of all our citizens, and that includes the 50% of the population that are women. So it's wonderful to be here. This is a conversation about women in media and art, and in the context of deepening democracy and women's empowerment. Media and visual imagery play such crucial roles on various levels, from freedom of expression and the ability to comment on, interrogate, and directly participate in the formulation and maintenance of a robust democracy, to having women be the authors of their own stories, be more visible and in ways that reflect their full selves and their diversity as human beings. So over the course of the next couple of days of the conference, we're going to reflect on women's participation in a variety of sectors, on social inclusion, on economic opportunity, but it really seems fitting that we would start the conference here with this conversation, because at the most basic fundamental level, it starts with how we see women in our society, and literally how we see them. Do we see them? Do we hear them? How are they constructed? How are they portrayed and perceived? What is the relationship between media and the arts and women's empowerment and ultimately social and political change? So that's what we want to explore in this session, and we are fortunate to have two women with us today who are blazing trails in their respective arenas to help us dive into these issues and more. And so I want to start with you, Geena, but before I start with you, I'm going to ask if we could roll a clip from Geena's organization. Well,
caught him by surprise.
Caught him by surprise. We're doing a little bit of speed dating here so we can catch up on some of the time.
Jane.
Here we go.
Meet Jane. See Jane. See her? She makes up half the world's population. But you wouldn't know it by watching kids' media. On screen, Jane is outnumbered by a ratio of 3 to 1. When she is there, a lot of time it's purely as eye candy. And girls everywhere are watching. On average, over 7 hours a day. If they see Jane, it's with little to say, few career options, and even fewer aspirations. But we can change. Meet Jane. See Jane? She has half the world's population. She has important things to say. And she can be anything she wants to be. But to empower girls, we need to see Jane. SeeJane.org. If she can see it, she can be it.
So, Geena, the organization that you founded really focuses on the portrayals of women and girls in the media and the entertainment industry. We're going to meet her again.
We met her.
Yeah. Why did you think that this was such an important issue to take on, and how did you end up coming to this work, you know, in addition to being an extraordinary actor and so accomplished on so many other dimensions? Why did you make this such a priority?
Thank you. Well, I had been very interested most of my adult life in philanthropy that empowers women and girls, and devoted a lot of time to that, but I didn't know about this particular problem. Having been in Hollywood a long time, I knew that there were far fewer roles for actresses than for actors, but I was managing to get some good ones and squeak by, and so I didn't feel compelled to start a movement about that. But when I had kids is when I noticed what we're showing children here. When my daughter was about 2 years old, I started showing her, you know, little G-rated videos and things like that. And I was absolutely floored to see that there seemed to be far fewer female characters than male characters in what was made for little kids. And so I started out by just asking people if they noticed that. I'd say to my friends, did you notice in that movie that just came out that there was only one female character in the entire movie? And everyone would say, oh my God, no, I didn't notice. So then I said, well, I'm going to start bringing it up with people in the industry. So if I had a meeting with a director or producer, I'd say, have you ever noticed how few female characters there are in like G-rated movies? And to a person, they said, oh, no, that's been fixed. And, okay. And very often they would name a movie with one female character in it as proof that gender disparity had been fixed. So this finally made me think, I think I have to do something more substantial about this, because if parents aren't noticing it, if people making it aren't noticing it, maybe if I had the data, it would be more convincing. So that's how the Institute started. And we've now sponsored the largest amount of research ever done on gender depictions in media, covering a 20-year span. And as you saw in the PSA, it's pretty miserable. For every one female character, there are 3 male characters. TV's a little better. The characters that are there, the female characters that are there, are usually serving the function of eye candy. They're narrowly stereotyped and hypersexualized. And this starts from the first things kids see. So my thought has been, and my goal has been to try to change what kids see from the beginning, because you learn your value to society by seeing yourself reflected in the culture. Oh, there's me. I must matter. And so conversely, there's no little 3-year-old girl who's going to say, I don't see myself being fairly represented up there. Where am I? They just take in this message, and the message is girls take up less space than boys, and women are less important than men. And so we're in effect training kids to accept this big gender imbalance. And by the way, the ratio has been exactly the same in movies since 1946. So all of us grew up on the very same imbalance, which is why I think the people making these entertainments for kids can't see it, is because that's the ratio they saw growing up. And it becomes so normal after that many hours of consumption that you just don't notice it.
Let me ask you a question before I want to turn to Manal and get her into the conversation. So I'm assuming you've gone around now that you have your facts, your hard facts and figures. How has that been received as you go back to those same, producers, writers, and directors and say, we haven't fixed it?
Yeah, it's completely different. I had no idea how they would respond, but from the very first presentation we gave at a studio, their jaws were on the floor. They had no idea how many female characters they were leaving out, and especially because I think it's family entertainment that they're making, and they want to do right by kids. The overwhelming feeling has been, why are we doing this? We should do better. We just did a survey of everyone in the industry who's heard our presentation, and of the respondents, over 50% said they had used what they learned in 3 or more of their projects. So we know that we're having an impact and that people are very responding very well.
So I want to turn to you, Manal, because your work really is very much about making women visible. And I think we actually have some photographs of some of your artwork. And thinking that maybe you could talk a little bit about what you seek to do with your art, what your approach is, what your focus has been, and what you hope to accomplish through your art in terms of empowering women.
It started off, my art is actually a self-representation, so I would see things happening around me in my society and think, okay, I'm not much of a writer, a poet, or a journalist, so how can I express this other than speaking about it? So I turned to my art and started addressing simple social issues like women and employment, women in sports, women's participation in politics within my country, which is very, very limited, if non-existent. And I eventually started inviting other women to come in and participate in my artworks, and it became from a participation of 13 women to my last project had 400 Saudi women participate and build my artwork with me. So in a way, I've managed to create a small platform for these women. They come in, we talk about the issue that's affecting them, and we all agree that yes, this is wrong, and we walk away with sort of a feeling that there are other women all over Saudi Arabia that think the same way, which gives them a bit of an empowerment feeling, going back to their own families and communities and saying, hey, it's not just me that doesn't like this, there's people all over the country. And I also play with a lot of media images that come out, and you can see some of these images have the black ghosts, and these are images that a lot of newspapers, conservative newspapers, because we have liberal and conservative, that usually use when they write an article about Saudi women actually achieving anything. They pull it from the archives and they put this shrouded black image. And it really, I feel, it affects the identity of women, and it's part of my life's work to address the issue of disappearance and erasing them, and the act of forgetting, the intentional forgetting. And I pull it out and make a commentary about that once you cover a woman's voice, you make her bring her voice down and stop mentioning her name, she will disappear, and we're fighting against that.
So a similar question to you that I asked Geena. What has been the reaction to your art in the Middle East, but in Saudi Arabia? You know, some people, it's powerful and can be viewed almost as a call for resistance against silence, against invisibility. What has the reaction been? Has it been received well, or?
I always get this question from journalists because it's a favorite. Have you ever been censored? Because famously, censorship is fun in the Middle East. And I always say, I wish I was censored once at least, because I would be a superstar now. But I try to push. I always work in very controversial artworks. My mother and my sisters always say that they'll bring comfy pillows to me if I ever wind up in jail. But apparently these artworks are not controversial enough, and it sort of makes me go back and think, what do I think is something that's untouchable as a subject to address and speak about and have a dialogue about within my community. One of the most controversial artworks that I have was the Suspended Together, which is an installation of doves, where in Saudi Arabia, women, in order to travel, they need a special permission from their male guardian. So, and the guardianship is a very deep, multi-leveled issue, but I decided to address it in travel. So I sent an email to about 20 women to send me their travel slip, which is quite a delicate document because it's issued by the Ministry of Interior. It's sensitive, but almost 150 women responded without even knowing who I am. I wasn't very well known then. And I placed it on these doves. Now these doves were shown in Dubai and at the Venice Biennale. But nobody wants to show it in Saudi because they think it's too controversial. Lo and behold, a few months later, the in-flight magazine of Saudi Arabian Airlines had a 4-page spread about this artwork, So everybody in Saudi had seen it, and nobody really commented about it. They're like, "Oh, lovely," and a very good social issue. So there isn't there. Sometimes you think there's going to be a fight against saying something, but when it's a logical argument, you get a lot of nods and agreement.
But so do you think that means that what you're portraying is accepted? So how do you think art or your art is changing things, is making change? You talked about the transformation or some of the change you see in the women who come and do art with you, but what about in society?
I really think art is self-expression. I've had people ask me, do you think your art has changed anything? And I personally think art doesn't change anything. It could lead maybe to a... And for me, if somebody walks up to my artwork and says, "Oh, pretty," and walks away, I think I've failed. But if I have somebody actually react to it and say, "Oh, I hate it," or "Let's talk about it over lunch," then there's a dialogue. And usually if there's a dialogue, it'll lead to somebody saying, "Let's change this situation."
So I want to stay with this theme of change and come back to you, Geena, about what you see as the path to change in the media and entertainment industry. I'm a lawyer by training, so it's always you go to is there a law or a regulation that we can, have to really make the media industry more representative, more inclusive.
Right.
But I know that's not your approach, and there are always inside strategies and outside strategies. So say something about how you see the path to change in terms of what we're seeing in media and entertainment.
Right. Well, I think it's going to take all angles. Our angle has been exclusively from the inside. Because I'm in the industry, I have direct access to Disney and Pixar and all the networks and all the studios and everyone. So we've been really fortunate in that and able to really start saturating the industry. There's certainly things that other people can do. Because of my position, I don't exhort the public to rise up and picket or something, but there are great sites and people that do point out these things in the media. But I think it's important for us to know in the work that we're doing this weekend how important the cultural message is, because there's so much that we want to help women with and change globally about the status of women. But if the cultural message is constantly saying that women are second-class citizens, it's going to defeat the things that we're trying to improve or greatly slow them down. If we can change the message that's in there, that women do hold all kinds of occupations. We just finished a study of the occupations of all female characters in family films, children's television programs, and primetime TV. And out of 11,000 speaking characters, women held only 20% of the jobs. And in the STEM fields, which we all care so much about, the ratio is 15-1, male to female. So we're not showing women taking their rightful place in society, which would then lead to social change, I think.
Let me ask you another question that often comes up when we talk about women's empowerment and social change and women's rights, and it's the question of women leading the change. You both are women who are leading some change, but in the media and entertainment industry, there's the issue of the women on the screen, how they're portrayed or not, how often we see them. But what about behind the scenes and behind the camera? Because women are also, vastly underrepresented as writers and producers and directors.
Right.
Does that matter? I mean, do we need to have women as content creators in order for this to really change or to accelerate change? I'm curious about your view about that.
Well, definitely we do. It's just as dismal behind the camera as in front of the camera, as you said. But we found in our research that if there's a woman writer, director, or producer on a movie, the number of on-screen female characters will increase. So that's one way to get more female characters. We can't rely on that to happen fast enough for us, because those numbers are so stagnant as far as female directors, and that's not going to be the avenue to change. We have to really change what the people who are already making these entertainment media, how they approach it. If we added female characters at the rate that we have been over the past 20 years, we will achieve gender parity in 700 years. I think it's a little too slow. If we vow to cut that in half, I think we'll be well on our way. So, I mean, we can't wait that long.
We can't wait.
We just absolutely
can't wait.
It has to have a light shined on it, and we need to, it's something we can change immediately. A movie can come out next year that's suddenly different than what it would have been.
So, Manal, let me come back to you also on this question of change and what kind of change we're seeing on the ground. Are things changing for women in Saudi Arabia? I saw an article. It was talking about Saudi's fearless female artists, and it was describing a whole grassroots almost movement of, primarily female artists who are really seeking to start a dialogue to make things change. Is it a turning point? I mean, are you seeing things change?
Like Geena, not fast enough. There are a lot of very, very powerful Saudi women, very intelligent, fighting on different levels for women in industry, women in the arts, women in academia, but there isn't that special push that can actually change things other than decrees from our king, who is quite reformist in my opinion. The one thing that I can benefit from or come away from this conference is to really encourage the support of programs that encourage arts globally, not just locally. And I'm one of these recipients of such grants where I was actually given the opportunity to be part of the International Cultural Leaders. This is a British Council program. I was also invited to be part of a CLOR program, which is for cultural leaders also, and that was in the UK. And different residencies from around the world have been made possible for me through grants, international grants from Dutch funders or UAE funders. Now, these funds don't come from within, and I've only had the opportunity to actually be encouraged to have a louder voice and to think about actually taking my art to change the world rather than just to make art to be hung at people's homes. And the idea of influencing people through my action, just being me, I didn't know the power of that. And now, even within Saudi Arabia, touring universities, speaking to students, which is my main objective for the past 2 years. I've been doing speaking tours to young women. It's just because they need to see role models, and these role models don't exist when you have two generations of my grandmother was Bedouin, so that was one generation that did not have women and employment and all the issues that we have today. My mother's generation, maybe 2% you can consider as active women that did not fall into the traditional role. So it's only my generation, that has so many challenges ahead of them, and things change so fast in the Middle East right now. Nothing is stable. It causes a lot of stress for young people because they don't know what is coming up next. There's little hope, and to have role models, to have people that say, we support you, just because your talent is amazing, is very, very important.
So I'm going to pause here and turn to all of you, because I know we wanted to see if we could have an opportunity for any questions briefly before we wrap up. Yes, right in the front.
Sure. I'm Elise Nelson, President and CEO of Vital Voices. We work with women leaders around the world. And I saw a study that came out last year, and it talked about violence in the media. And it talked about how
I'm Elise Nelson from Vital Voices, and we work with women leaders around the world. And I saw a study that came out last year that I wanted to raise and get particularly Geena's thoughts about. It talked about violence in the media and how violence overall, actually over the last 5 years, has remained flat, but violence against women has gone up by 60%, and violence against girls went up by more than 200%. And so it's almost like violence against girls has become popular, trendy. It's what sells, which I find obviously extremely alarming. And I just wonder, Geena, is that something that you've been focusing on, not just sort of getting more women's representation as lead characters, but also figuring out how do we tackle that? Because I work with so many women leaders who are trying to end violence against women, but they need, the media to sort of reflect that back.
Right. We haven't personally done research on violence in media, especially against women. But obviously we read the same studies. It's a horrible problem. I really don't know why it's increasing at that extraordinary rate. I know that the hypersexualization of female characters is constantly increasing at an alarming rate. We just saw a study that showed that 6-year-old girls are now self-sexualizing. They're learning to view themselves through a male gaze and know that their job is to become a sex object. So it's all very horrifying. I think it's kind of all of the same piece, though, that once you can start focusing on how are the female characters depicted and how is this affecting people, we can make the change.
Any other questions?
Oh, right here.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Laura Listwood, Council of Women World Leaders. Another question to you, Geena. One assumes, rightly or wrongly, that the media makes profit from all of this, and therefore some of the skewing has some sort of profitability behind it. I'm wondering what role does this sort of marketing of toys, the Star Wars figures, etc., have to do with what's happening?
It has a tremendous amount to do with what's going on. The toys can sometimes even come before the entertainment is created. It's very, very important to people. We spoke to one animation studio where they said the network that they sell their shows to told them stop putting female characters in there because they're taking up the space of a male character for which we could sell the toy. So they wanted it to be only male characters, in other words. So it's a big problem. I think, it's a sweeping problem. I think part of it definitely is that the female characters are so limited and so uninteresting that people don't want to buy the toy of that character. And there just needs to be a sort of sea change in how the creators of characters view female characters, a broadening. I always say, just change the name, write it as a male, I don't care, and then change it to a female, because there's a big hesitation in Hollywood, like people wanting to be careful about how they portray female characters. At the Animators Guild, we had a forum, and one of the male animators said, we don't want to make, we'd love to make more female characters, but we can't because they're too boring. What? But basically, they were limiting themselves. They were thinking, well, we can only make female characters really pretty and nice and great, and we dare not make them have personalities, basically, because we might be insulting women. So we just need to have a big change in how women are viewed.
Any other questions? Yes, in the back.
Oh, we got someone right there.
We've got two.
Should I go first? My question is to Geena. Years ago, before the Iranian Revolution, when I was in the cabinet for women's affairs, seems like a million years ago, we were trying to do some of the kind of thing that you are so wonderfully doing with the media. And one way of approaching this identity, both self-identity in terms of women and also general way women are observed, was through studying the grammar school and kindergarten teaching material, and to see how they are represented, because usually they show the woman at home with an apron cooking and the man doing something more active and decision making and so forth. And I was wondering if you have any statistics or any observations about how the school books are impacting young children, since this is a wide-reaching kind of a self-identification. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. It's definitely the next area that I want to get into, is how are we leaving girls out of textbooks? Are we looking, when we're creating textbooks or online education, are we using a gender lens to make sure that the images are half female and that the language is supportive of women and girls? Because we know that women and girls, that girls drop out of the STEM fields around 12 years old, and why is that happening, and can we improve it through the way they're educated? So I agree with you.
My name is Farida Al-Lagi from the Libyan Forum of Civil Society. I have a comment that might lead to a question. I think for the last 2 decades, if not more, in the Arab world, we have been debating the media. The media in our region, as you all know, is either controlled by governments. Most of them are dictators and they have only one language that they want to sell to the public, or by private sector, who are definitely after, money, okay? So, honestly speaking, we spoke about, the curriculum, it became a tireless debate. In my opinion now, maybe with the new social media where the young people are connected, that's where the new movement in our region has to come from. Because the research is proving over and over and over. Look what's happening now after the Arab revolutions. Where are the women in the media who really led this revolution, who paid the big price?
So there's your question, and I'm going to give that question to Manal.
Yeah.
Manal, how do you see the role of new media and the internet? And, we saw so much, with Arab Spring. How do you see that in terms of the work you're doing and the progress you're trying to make?
Well, definitely social media is the biggest exciting thing that's happening within the Gulf region and the Middle East, and its role, again, in the revolutions that have been happening. Specifically in Saudi Arabia, social media has become a platform for women's voices. So if you're a young girl living in some obscure village in Saudi Arabia, you can go on Twitter or Facebook and you have a platform. You can say what you want, you can express what you want, and Twitter has taken on a completely different role in Saudi, where there's absolutely no censorship. People go at it. They speak about social issues they're unhappy about, politics, whatever comes to their minds. As for me and my art, it's brought me closer to a lot of people, and it was very important to me in my artistic practice not to be producing art that is elitist, and especially in Saudi Arabia and most of the Gulf region, we don't have museums and very few galleries, so the majority of people never have walked in and interacted with art. So I do want to produce art, and people just look at it. They're like, this is not for me. This is a different, higher language that I'm not. It's for the wealthy, and so I use social media to connect with the majority of women that participate within my artworks or want to view my artworks. I've had many young women come up to me and say, "Oh, I love the artwork that you did that was shown in Jeddah." And I asked them, "Have you seen it?" She's like, "No, I've seen it on the internet." So people follow me and understand, have conversations with me. And social media is actually a new platform that should not be ignored.
Great democratizing tool. I'm going to take you as the last question because I know we're going to have to wrap up here shortly.
My name is Tarja Hagonen and I'm the former president of Finland. I had an opportunity to pay an official state visit to Saudi Arabia a few years ago, and then your king asked me to give a speech at the University for Women in Jeddah. That was a really exciting experience because I think that I can say it very openly, that after they closed the doors, because it was just strictly for the women, they closed the doors, so the passion how the ladies show that they want to take their ways away and everything. So it really surprised me. I know that you are very strong ladies, but the atmosphere was really something what I didn't expect. So my question is that, do you think so that when you say that the progress has not advanced fast enough, that happens in the most of the countries, but how you can think that those kind of the women who show their passion for the equality so strongly at the university, how they will see the world, their life after the university, when they go back to their families and they would like to get a family of their own.
I'm sorry, what's the question?
So at that, how do you feel that the women, the academic women, when they have got their degree? And so I think that the surroundings are not perhaps as eager for the equality that what it is among the students, the student women. So how do you think that, what's the situation then when they are back in working life or in what I think in their families?
Definitely, this is a huge concern for me and a lot of people, because I definitely think the path to women's empowerment, especially in my country, is number one, education, and number two, financial independence, and that's through working. Now, with a couple of years ago, the statistics of women's employment was 3% in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. I'm not sure what the percentage is now, but there's a huge push to include women within employment. But women cannot get to their jobs because they can't drive. So there's this conundrum that people are just not addressing these little issues. And but there was this conversation I was having with a friend of mine about how women's empowerment is progressing in the Gulf region. And for example, in the UAE, where their rulers in general have been pushing for women to be to participate in government and in building the country. So we always say that the UAE woman has a red carpet spread for her, but she's just touching it with her foot and saying, I don't know, should I or shouldn't I? So she's got all these opportunities. And Saudi women, on the other hand, have a closed door, and they're all gathered at this door banging and trying to break it down. So there's this excitement about, we want to participate. We're not waiting for somebody to give permission. So there's going to be sort of a huge push soon, just because the majority of our population right now is 50% of our population is under the age of 25. And these people are going to come back from studying abroad, because right now we have the largest scholarship program. It's called the King Abdullah Scholarship Program, with almost 35,000 students studying abroad outside of Saudi. So these kids are going to come back, and they're not going to accept the status quo. I'm banking on them. I'm banking on the youth.
So we're going to have to wrap up now, I know, because we have to go on to another part of the session. I'm just going to come right back to the two of you and give you the last comment. And what I was going to ask, although I'm going to let you say whatever you want as your final comment, is you have an audience of former heads of state, leaders, other kinds of decision makers. You have your own particular talents, and you do what you do. But what would you urge our audience to do? What specifically can they do as you think about change? And I know, Manal, you gave one, which was that support the arts. I hope you all got that takeaway. But I'll go to you, Manal, and then to Geena, and then we'll wrap up.
Well, I've already said what I wanted, which is really focus on creating leaders within culture. And culture is an incredible platform of communication where there is no language, there is no status, and it reaches messages, especially visual, reach everybody. Cultural leaders are also not seen as aggressive or people who are dangerous in some cultures, not in every culture. And I'm one of these people who's benefited from international grants from countries that you all belong to, and I think that you should probably make sure this continues, because now since the financial crisis, a lot of this funding has disappeared. And thank you.
Thank you, Manal. Geena?
What I hope to convey is just how powerful the impact of media images is, or possibly is. And here's my theory about this. There was a study done a couple of years ago that looked at 10 sectors of society, what they consider the 10 most important sectors: business, law, politics, media, etc. to find the percentage of women in positions of authority in these 10 sectors. And across the board, the average percentage of female leaders was 17%. In all of the major categories of society, everything had leveled out at 17%. So how could that be possible? But it's sort of everywhere. 17% of cardiac surgeons are women. 17% of the Animators Guild is women. It's really, if you start looking now, you'll see that in many areas, the participation of women levels out between like 16 and 20%. So guess what the percentage of female characters in crowd scenes in movies is? 17%. In crowd scenes. How do you even leave out that many women in a crowd scene? But in both animated and live action, there's only 17%. So in other words, in the world that the movie creates, the village, town, the group and crowd, is only 17% female. So couldn't it be, since that's the only ratio anybody has ever seen in their consumption of media, that becomes completely normal, and therefore when you reach that, you feel done. It looks normal. You feel like we've covered women. And so therefore, if we change what kids see, if we show boys and girls sharing the sandbox equally from the beginning, wouldn't they grow up to see 50-50 as normal?
So we're going to support the artists, and we're going to break that 17%. Manal and Geena, thank you so much, and thank you to all of you.
Maya, on behalf of the Club of Madrid, thank you very much for facilitating that most stimulating debate. That brings an end to these proceedings here this afternoon, but could I just point out one piece of housekeeping? All members of the Club of Madrid are due to have their photograph taken, I think, at 2:40 in the Presidential Library. So if members could begin to make their way over to the Presidential Library, would be most appreciated. Thank you very, very much. Thank you, Geena. Thank you, Manal. Thank you, Maya, for a wonderful lunch.